Have you ever wondered why the most intense relationships always seem to end in the most devastating heartbreak? Why that person who once couldn't live without you suddenly feels nothing? Why the passionate love that consumed your every thought just vanishes? What if I told you that 200 years ago, a philosopher discovered the brutal truth about love that society has been desperately trying to hide from you ever since? Arthur Schopenhauer uncovered something so controversial, so fundamentally disturbing, about the nature of romantic love that most people can't handle it. This isn't feel-good advice. This isn't relationship coaching. This is the raw, unfiltered truth that explains why your relationships fail, why you keep making the same mistakes, and why modern dating feels so empty and exhausting. Before I reveal what Schopenhauer discovered, hit that subscribe button and like this video, because YouTube actively suppresses content that challenges mainstream narratives about relationships. And trust me, after hearing this, you'll never look at love the same way again. Introduction to Schopenhauer. Arthur Schopenhauer wasn't just another philosopher writing abstract theories from an ivory tower. Born in 1788 in what is now Poland, he was the first Western philosopher to integrate Eastern wisdom with European thought, creating one of the most brutally honest philosophical systems ever conceived. But what made Schopenhauer truly different was his willingness to confront the darkest aspects of human existence that other thinkers were too afraid to acknowledge. While his contemporaries like Hegel were celebrated and given prestigious teaching positions, Schopenhauer was ridiculed and ignored. Why? Because he refused to sugarcoat reality with comforting lies. Imagine being so ahead of your time that the academic establishment actively works to silence you. Schopenhauer scheduled his university lectures at the exact same time as the famous Hegel. Confident students would choose his superior insights. But on the first day, he stood in an empty lecture hall while Hegel addressed a packed audience, yet Schopenhauer had the last laugh. He predicted, "My time will come." And he was right. After his death, his ideas revolutionized psychology through Freud and Jung, inspired Nietzsche, and even influenced Einstein's scientific theories. But his most controversial insights, the ones we're discussing today, remain largely suppressed because they challenge the very foundation of what society tells us about love and relationships. At the core of Schopenhauer's philosophy is what he called the will, a blind, irrational force that drives all of nature, including humans. Unlike other philosophers who claimed reason was our defining feature, Schopenhauer recognized that we are primarily driven by unconscious biological impulses that we rationalize after the fact. And nowhere is this more evident than in romantic love. What we call love is nothing but the will to life of the species. Arthur Schopenhauer made a discovery that modern science has only recently confirmed. What we experience as passionate love, that overwhelming attraction, that obsessive thinking about another person, that feeling that you've found your soulmate, is not what we think it is. It's not about you finding the one. It's not about spiritual connection. It's not even about your happiness. It's about reproduction. It's about your genes manipulating your consciousness to ensure their survival into the next generation. When you feel that intense chemistry with someone, when you can't stop thinking about them, when you're willing to sacrifice everything for them, you're not making a conscious choice. You're being controlled by biological imperatives that don't care about your long-term happiness. I know what you're thinking. That's not true. My love is real. It's special. That's exactly what the will wants you to believe. That's the illusion it creates to ensure you fulfill its agenda. And I get it. This truth hurts. It's easier to believe in soulmates and destiny than to confront the biological reality of what's happening in your brain and body when you fall in love. The Love Illusion Exposed. In his essay, Metaphysics of Sexual Love, Schopenhauer exposed the mechanism behind romantic attraction with shocking precision. Here's how the illusion works. First, the will identifies potential reproductive partners with complementary genetic traits. Your conscious mind experiences this as chemistry or attraction. Second, the will creates an illusion that this specific person is extraordinarily special, even perfect. This is what we call falling in love or infatuation. Have you ever been so obsessed with someone that you couldn't see their flaws? That you ignored red flags that were obvious to everyone else? That's not a sign of true love. That's the biological illusion at work. Third, once the biological goal is achieved, typically through marriage, commitment, or reproduction, the illusion gradually dissolves. The person you once saw as perfect suddenly appears ordinary. Their quirks, which you once found endearing, become irritating. This explains why so many relationships follow the exact same pattern: intense passion and idealization, followed by disappointment and disillusionment. It's not a coincidence. It's by design. Studies show that passionate love typically lasts between 12–18 months, just long enough to establish a bond that would historically ensure offspring survival. After that, dopamine and serotonin levels return to normal, and you wake up from the biological trance. Ask yourself, how many times have you heard someone say, "They changed," or "They're not the person I fell in love with"? The brutal truth is, they didn't change. The illusion faded. You're finally seeing them as they always were. And this is where the real suffering begins. The cycle of suffering Schopenhauer identified what modern psychology has only recently acknowledged. Desire creates suffering. When we desire something, whether it's a person, status, or material possession, we experience a lack, an emptiness that we believe will be filled once we obtain the object of our desire. But here's the brutal truth about desire. Satisfaction is always temporary. Always. Think about your past relationships. Remember how you thought, if only I could be with this person, I'd be happy. And maybe you were, for a while. But eventually that satisfaction faded, and you either began desiring someone new or started demanding more from your partner to recapture that initial feeling. And our culture exploits this cycle mercilessly. Dating apps promise the next match will be better. Rom-coms sell the fantasy that there's one perfect person who will complete you. Social media bombards you with images of seemingly perfect couples. It's a system designed to keep you trapped in a cycle of desire and disappointment, because satisfied people don't consume. They don't keep swiping. They don't buy self-help books or relationship courses. But Schopenhauer didn't just identify the problem. Unlike modern influencers who expose problems just to sell you solutions, he offered a genuine path forward, one that few have the courage to follow. Schopenhauer's radical solutions. Schopenhauer proposed something revolutionary. The only escape from the suffering of desire is not through satisfaction, but through the quieting of desire itself. This is where his study of Eastern philosophies, particularly Buddhism and Hinduism, profoundly influenced his thinking. He recognized that the Western pursuit of happiness, through acquisition and achievement, was fundamentally flawed. All satisfaction, or what is commonly called happiness, is really and essentially always negative only, and never positive. Arthur. Schopenhauer. What Schopenhauer means is that what we call happiness is actually just the temporary relief from a particular desire or suffering. It's not a positive state in itself. It's the momentary absence of pain. And this insight completely transforms how we should approach relationships. Instead of chasing the biological high of new love, which is guaranteed to fade, Schopenhauer suggests we should, first, recognize romantic love for what it actually is: a biological illusion designed to perpetuate the species, not to make you happy. Second, approach relationships with clear awareness rather than blind passion. When you understand the mechanism of attraction, you can make conscious choices rather than being controlled by unconscious drives. Third, build relationships based on friendship, intellectual compatibility, and shared values, elements that survive, long after passionate love fades. But let's be honest, this is a bitter pill to swallow. Our entire culture is built around the romantic myth that Schopenhauer dismantled. Billion-dollar industries depend on you continuing to chase the illusion, and that's why his insights remain so controversial even today. The modern dating catastrophe. If Schopenhauer thought romantic illusions were problematic in the 19th century, imagine what he would say about our modern dating landscape. Dating apps have gamified romance, turning potential partners into commodities, to be swiped through like products on Amazon. Social media creates unrealistic expectations about relationships. Hookup culture promises satisfaction through endless novel encounters. Studies show that despite more opportunities to connect than ever before, loneliness and relationship dissatisfaction are at all-time highs. Depression rates among young adults have doubled in the past decade. Marriage rates are plummeting while divorce remains around 50%. Is it any wonder? We've created a system that maximizes the biological illusion while minimizing the elements that create lasting bonds. We've amplified exactly what Schopenhauer warned against. The modern dating market is perfectly designed to keep you trapped in the cycle of desire and disappointment. New potential partners are always just a swipe away. The algorithm is programmed to show you increasingly attractive options to keep you engaged. The validation of matches provides dopamine hits without requiring actual connection. And when the inevitable disappointment comes, when the person you've been messaging doesn't match their profile, when the relationship fizzles after a few months, when the passion fades, the system has a ready solution. Just start swiping again. But what if there's another way? Applying Schopenhauer's wisdom, despite the bleak reality Schopenhauer exposed, his philosophy offers profound liberation for those brave enough to embrace it. Here's how to apply Schopenhauer's insights to transform your experience of relationships. First, develop self-awareness about your biological drives. When you feel intense attraction, recognize it as primarily biological rather than magical or spiritual. This doesn't mean the feeling isn't real. It just isn't what you've been conditioned to believe it is. Second, cultivate sources of meaning beyond romantic relationships. Schopenhauer believed that art, philosophy, and compassion offer more sustainable fulfillment than the temporary high of romantic love. Develop your own interests, creative pursuits, and meaningful work. Third, if you choose to pursue relationships, prioritize intellectual and temperamental compatibility over intense passion. Look for someone you genuinely enjoy talking to, whose company brings you peace rather than drama, whose values align with yours. Fourth, and this is crucial, approach relationships with radical honesty. Discuss Schopenhauer's insights with potential partners. Be upfront about the biological nature of attraction and the inevitable fading of passion. Build relationships based on mutual understanding rather than mutual delusion. Finally, if you do commit to someone, do so with eyes wide open. Understand that the feeling of being in love will transform over time. Prepare for this evolution rather than being devastated by it. This approach won't give you the Hollywood romance you've been programmed to desire, but it offers something far more valuable: freedom from the cycle of illusion and disappointment that traps so many people. The counter-arguments, now, I can already hear the objections forming. This is too cynical. Love is more than biology. What about soulmates and spiritual connections? I get it. Schopenhauer's view challenges our most cherished beliefs about love. And there are legitimate counter-arguments worth considering. Some researchers point to couples who maintain passionate love for decades as evidence against Schopenhauer's view. Others argue that the spiritual and emotional dimensions of love transcend mere biology. Even Schopenhauer acknowledged that human experience is complex. While he believed romantic love was primarily a biological illusion, he also recognized that humans are capable of compassion, friendship, and intellectual connection that go beyond reproductive imperatives. The question isn't whether Schopenhauer was 100% correct in every detail. The question is whether his core insight that romantic love is largely a biological mechanism that creates temporary illusions, contains essential truth that can help us navigate relationships more effectively, and I would argue that it does. Even if you believe in soulmates or spiritual connection, acknowledging the biological reality of attraction and the natural evolution of relationships can only lead to more authentic, sustainable connections. After all, isn't a love based on clear-eyed acceptance of reality stronger than one built on illusion? Personal reflection. I want to share something personal. When I first encountered Schopenhauer's ideas about love, I was resistant. Like most people, I'd been raised on a steady diet of romantic movies, love songs, and cultural messaging about finding the one. I had experienced the cycle Schopenhauer described multiple times: the intense attraction, the idealization, the inevitable disappointment. But I always blamed specific circumstances or incompatibilities rather than questioning the nature of romantic love itself. There was the relationship where the passion was so intense, I thought I'd found my soulmate. Only to wake up one day and wonder what I ever saw in them. There was the partner who seemed perfect until the rose-colored glasses came off. There were the countless times I confused biological attraction with deeper compatibility. Embracing Schopenhauer's perspective wasn't easy. It meant acknowledging that many of my most powerful emotional experiences were, at their core, biological processes rather than cosmic connections. It meant accepting that the Hollywood version of love I'd been chasing was largely an illusion. But here's the surprising truth. This realization wasn't depressing. It was liberating. Once I stopped chasing the biological high of new love and started building connections based on genuine compatibility and shared values, my relationships became more authentic, more peaceful, and ultimately more fulfilling. I'm not saying Schopenhauer has all the answers. I'm saying that his willingness to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature offers a pathway to liberation that few philosophers or modern relationship gurus have the courage to provide. Call to action. So where does this leave us? If Schopenhauer is right, if romantic love is largely a biological illusion designed to perpetuate the species, what should we do with this knowledge? First, share this video. Not because I want views, but because these ideas need to be part of our cultural conversation about relationships. Tag someone who needs to hear this. Challenge your friends to consider a perspective that goes against everything we're taught about love. Second, join the conversation. Leave a comment sharing your own experience with the cycle Schopenhauer described. Have you experienced the idealization and subsequent disillusionment in relationships? How has it affected you? Your story might help others recognize patterns in their own lives. Third, subscribe and hit the notification bell. In my next video, I'll explore how Nietzsche built on Schopenhauer's insights to develop a revolutionary approach to creating meaning in a world without romantic illusions. Finally, check out the resources in the description. I've linked to translations of Schopenhauer's key works, modern research that supports his theories, and a community of people discussing these ideas in depth. Remember, the truth may be uncomfortable, but it's always better than comforting lies. Schopenhauer's brutal honesty about love isn't meant to depress you. It's meant to free you from cycles of illusion and disappointment that trap so many people. In a world that profits from your romantic delusions, choosing to see clearly is the most radical act of self-liberation possible. This channel, where we explore the forbidden truths of philosophy that can transform your life. If this resonated with you, give it a thumbs up, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and I'll see you in the next video.